Shalom, WJC family. It's time for our weekly Torah Talk. This week in synagogue, we will be reading Parshat Ki Tavo. I wanted to use Parshat Ki Tavo as an opportunity to talk about this beautiful concept that was coined in the late 50s, early 60s by a conservative rabbi, Max Kedushin, called normal mysticism. And normal mysticism is the idea of finding in everyday mundane things something special and connected to God. So, for example, when we wake up in the morning and we're supposed to say, Modeh ani lefanecha, thank you, God, for returning my soul and allowing me to open my eyes and get up. There's this sense that we are taking just the simple, everyday, commonplace thing of waking up and thinking of it as a vayinafash, as a re-insouling of ourselves. That is what Kedushin calls in his book Worship and Ethics, normal mysticism, which he defines as a person to make normal, commonplace, recurrent situations and events occasions for worship. These daily commonplace situations are not only interpreted in the act of worship as manifestations of God's love, but they arouse in the individual a poignant sense of nearness to God. It's such a beautiful concept and one that is so central to Judaism and Jewish practice, really right from the beginning. We even see it in Ki Tavo in our Parsha. The Parsha starts out with the farmers of Israel coming to do two important things, but fairly mundane ones. One, they have to bring their first fruits that they grow in their fields to the Beit HaMikdash and offer them to the Kohen. And two, they have to take a second tithe from their goods. The first tithe goes to the Kohen. A second tithe, they're commanded, has to go to the poor and the Levites and the strangers who live among them in the land of Israel. And in and of themselves, those are not such important things. They're taxes, right? A tax to the temple of the first fruits and a tax, sort of a welfare tax to take care of those who have less. So it seems to make sense. But when the farmers bring these goods, there's a prayer to be said along with them. One may sound familiar from the Haggadah. They bring their first fruits and they place this basket before the Kohen and they say, Arami Oved Ivri, my father was a wandering Aramean and he went down to Egypt, few in number. There, right, was persecuted, all the things. God brings him out with a strong hand and an outstretched arm, signs and wonders, and brought me to this land, a land flowing with milk and honey. And therefore today I bring my first fruits. Right? Takes a religious tax that the state was putting on their goods, but now it's not just passing along some fruit to the tax man. It's a religious experience. It's a recognition of God's redemption in the world and God's ability to connect that directly through to the fruit. God's redeeming us from Egypt to the fruit in the basket in the promised land. And so too, with the Maaser Sheni, the second tithe, when they bring them, they just say, I have obeyed the Lord my God. I have done just as you commanded me. Look down from your holy abode from heaven and bless your people Israel. Right? So the farmer says, just as I'm giving this tithe to those who have needs, the poor and the Levite, and the strangers who live among us, so too God should have that kind of kindness on us in our times of need. Again, taking this mundane sort of welfare tax and making it such that there is this powerful connection to God and how God acts in the world. And when you think about it, so much of Jewish prayer operates this way. One of my favorite prayers is maybe one of the first you learned when you were learning your Shabbat prayers. Hamotzi lechem min haaretz, right? Blessed are you, Lord our God, sovereign of the universe, who brings forth bread from the earth. What does that even mean? God doesn't bring forth bread from the earth. There's seeds and they germinate and that becomes wheat. And the wheat gets harvested and then ground up into flour. And then the flour gets mixed with its ingredients with water and yeast and whatever, and ultimately becomes bread. We could see that as a very mundane operation of harvesting and baking. But the rabbis, our faith, chooses to see it as, in fact, this amazing ability of God to bring bread from the earth. And when we look at it like that, it is, in fact, really amazing that the idea that this wheat seed can turn into a loaf of bread, yeah, with a little effort, a little water, a little skill, but ultimately, that is normal mysticism, to see the wonder and amazement in all the things around us. And it seems that in Parshat Ki Tavo, that is what Moses is telling the people, that it's time for them, when they're living in this holy land, this promised land, to see God's activity, not like other mystics might do, waiting for a big revelation, or they climb to the top of the mountain, or for a storm, or a trek out into the desert, but no, in each and every day and in everything we do. And that is the blessing that Judaism holds for us. The ability to say a prayer when we eat, right? What could be more mundane than eating? And to recognize the holiness in that act and God's presence, and just the very idea that we're going to put this food in us and our bodies can turn it into energy and allow us to survive and even more so to thrive and to think and to speak and to help others. And the idea that we can connect a morsel of food to being able to put goodness and holiness into the world, that is mind-blowing. Or it can be when we operate like normal mystics, when we see God in the world in the mundane things. And so, as we turn to this Shabbat, a time to maybe focus on the world in a different way and see more of the holiness and the sacred in the mundane, that we are all able to capture some of what Kedushin called normal mysticism, to have a mystical eye in the way we see what's going on around us in the world. And may, with that mystical eye, we help bring that holiness and goodness to everyone. That would truly be a Shabbat Shalom, a Shabbat of wholeness and integrity and peace. May it be in all of our futures. Shabbat Shalom.